kitchen, it is all about coffee. I'm doing a coffee-crusted steak over a bed of crispy hash brown potatoes and serving that up with a coffee au jus. Then it's tirimisu and blondies, and I'm serving that up with a mocha ice cream. So why don't you pull up a chair and dine with me?
Welcome back, everybody. Yes, it is all about coffee today. And like always, we're starting with our desserts because they take the longest. And it is a mocha ice cream. Guys, this is going to be so fabulous. So first, 2 cups of heavy whipping cream. We're doing a no churn recipe. So we're going to take some whipped cream and we're going to flavor it up. And that's going to be our ice cream. So I just come in here with my whisk, nice and low. And you can kind of speed it up some. Until it thickens up and you get nice thick peaks. Kind of tilt the bowl to help incorporate some more air into the mixture of what's left. Okay, guys. Yeah, look at that. Nice and thick. You should be able to turn it upside down and it stays in place. It's perfect. Pull these babies out. Take all the texture. And we're going to set this aside and move on to the rest of our mixture. Okay, for the rest of our mixture, we need some sweetened condensed milk, some cocoa, some vanilla, and some instant coffee. I'm going to start with it first. I just want a couple tablespoons just to give that nice rich. And this is a dark roast. It's going to give you that really intense coffee flavor. It's going to play nicely with the chocolate. And if you have a spice grinder, if you have a pestle mortar, that's great. I'm just going to take the back of my spoon here and just kind of press down on the coffee granules until they're kind of powder-like. We don't want this coarse texture in our ice cream. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Beautiful. And equal parts of the cocoa. It's going to be just a nice flavorful chocolate coffee. And now for the sweetened condensed milk. So you notice I did not add any sugar to the whipped cream because the sweetened condensed milk, that's going to give us all of our sweetness. The sweetened condensed milk, it's just milk that's been condensed. It's had a good amount of the moisture removed. And it just really intensifies the natural sweetness of the milk. Perfect for desserts and things. And a great substitute for making ice cream. Okay, there's our sweetened condensed milk. Now, I don't want this to be too sweet, so I'm going to throw in just a pinch of salt. And then, of course, our vanilla. A whole teaspoon there. That's going to really wake up all these flavors. And I always use the good vanilla. Then we'll come in here with a little whisk here and just stir all that together until all the cocoa and the coffee and everything is combined nicely into our sweetened condensed milk. Almost looks like a brownie batter. Very nice. Alright, so that's pretty good. We'll get rid of our whisk and change to a spatula. Okay, so first we're going to take a little of the whipped cream, about half, and incorporate it into our chocolate mixture gently. That's why we're using a spatula now instead of our whisk. We want to fold it in so we don't lose any of that air that we whipped up making the whipped cream. And just until it's nice and combined. Then we dump this mixture into the rest of the whipped cream. Make sure we get all of that out of there. And now we fold this in until it all comes together into a nice combined mixture. And again, just folding this so we come underneath and we turn it over on itself. Now all you need is a little pan. You use a bread loaf, pound cake pan, whatever you have. And just pour this in. Yeah. Guys, that looks so good. And just kind of smooth it out on top. If you see any bits that aren't quite mixed in, just give a little stir. You can see a little flecks of the coffee in there, so you know it's going to be good. Alright, I'm going to wipe up any little extra bits here on the side. And then I'm just going to cover this with plastic, and it is going to go in my deep freeze for about 4 to 6 hours until it's nice. Okay guys, ice cream is in the deep freeze chilling. Now we're going to move on to something unique that you've probably never heard of before. So you're familiar with the classic Italian dessert tiramisu. I'm sure you're also familiar with blondies. But have you ever heard of tiramisu blondies? I bet you haven't, so that's what we're gonna be making today. So I got this recipe idea from a friend of mine who hosts trivia. Those were his 2 favorite desserts, and I always fix desserts for people's birthdays. And I thought, why not do both? So I kind of threw something together here by the seat of my pants, and it turned out really great. And I said, you know what, I gotta recreate this for the channel. So yes, I am cheating and using cake mix, butter golden Duncan Hines, or whatever brand you like. Basically, we're just going to be cutting all of the wet ingredients in half. That's going to give us that blondie texture. So, we're starting with the cake mix. To that, I'm going to add a little nutmeg. About a 1/4 teaspoon, just to give it a little something. And a pinch of salt. And that is the extent of our dry ingredients because Duncan did all the measuring for us. I'm using a sift, of course, especially if you're not sure where the flour is coming from. It just gives you a nice light and tender product. And see all these lumps? That's exactly why we sift. Okay. And that is it for the dry ingredients. Now for the wet ingredients, starting with a 1/3 cup of melted butter. And we're going to crack 1 egg into that very carefully because we do not want eggshells in our tiramisu blondies. And we need about 3 tablespoons of milk, or 1/3 cup. Okay. And we're going to give that a little stir. I just want to break up that egg and get it nice and mixed before I pour this into our dry ingredients. Okay, that's good. I also want a couple teaspoons of vanilla, about 1.5 teaspoons actually. I want this to have lots of good flavor. So the blondie part is going to be mimicking the lady fingers. And then we're going to do a coffee cream that's going to mimic the pastry cream. So I'm also going to do 1/2 teaspoon of almond here. It is very strong in flavor, so we don't use quite as much of that. And with a traditional tiramisu, you take the lady fingers, you dip them in some kind of coffee, kind of rum mixture. So I've got our rum here, a dark rum, not your coconut rum. We're not making pina coladas, we're making tiramisu blondies. And I want a couple tablespoons of that as well, because I want this to have a really nice rich flavor. And give this another little whisk. And we're just going to pour that right in here. That rum smells amazing, let me tell you. And one last thing for the wet ingredients. Brown sugar, about 3/4 cup. Make sure you pack it tight so you get a perfect measurement. And we are ready to whisk. Give it a little stir here. And I like to fold it in at this point because I don't want to overwork the flour. The gluten in the flour, when you overwork it, that's what makes your cakes dense and tough, and they're not going to rise quite as well. And basically just kind of, like we did with the ice cream, you just kind of turn it over on itself until everything is well incorporated. Oh yeah, guys, so you'll notice just a little denser than a typical cake batter, but not quite like a brownie batter. So that's just going to give us the perfect texture here. And I've got my 13x9. I just gave it a nice little spray tan with my non-stick. And we're going to dump this right in. Make sure we get every little last bit out of here. Yum, yum, yum. Okay. Delish. And we're just going to smooth this out. Just so we have a nice even layer on all sides. And I like to give it a little tap, 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 just to make sure we don't have any air bubbles in there. Now you're probably thinking, these are just blondies. Well, we're not done yet. I have another step before these go in. So before these go in, one more thing here, and that is the cream part of this dessert. So like I mentioned before, tiramisu has that pastry cream and you layer it. So this is going to kind of reenact that flavor sensation. So I'm using mascarpone. It's almost like when you make brownies with the cream cheese swirled in, but I like the mascarpone. It's easier to mix and I feel like it's just a little sweeter naturally. And then we're just gonna flavor it up and stir it right in. So to this mixture, our second egg. This is going to thin this out, and it's also going to give these a nice little rise, having that second egg. And I just want to kind of break that up a little bit and kind of stir it in. And then to this, a couple tablespoons of sugar, just to give it some nice sweetness. A little more of our vanilla, about a teaspoon. Then we come back to our cocoa and our coffee. So the cocoa, a couple heaping tablespoons. So I want this to have lots of flavor. And about a heaping tablespoon of the instant coffee. And to balance everything out again, just a little pinch of salt. And just stir this all together carefully. We don't want to wear this. Again, just kind of going around and folding everything over until it's all incorporated nicely. Doesn't that look amazing, guys? Nice and fudgy. Just make sure all that mascarpone is mixed in. And then I'm just going to take some of our mixture here and just kind of dollop it on top in some various places here. Then I just take a butter knife, or you can use a kind of icing spatula, and we're just going to come in here. And this doesn't have to be exact, but I just kind of swirl everything together. I don't want it completely mixed in because I want that kind of look that we've got two different things going on here. And I just kind of go in circles. You can change direction. You can do kind of S's or swirls, zigzags. We don't want it to look uniformed. We want people to know that this is a homemade dessert. So it does not have to be perfect, but I do want to make sure that we get some of those flavors in every corner. Guys, this looks so good. And then we're just going to pop this in the oven. We're still going to cook it at the same time as on the box. So for 13 by 9, that's going to be about 32 minutes or so. We can always check it, and if it needs just a little longer, we can do that. But I'd say we're pretty good here, guys, and this baby is ready to go. All right, welcome back, guys. Moving on to our entree, coffee crusted steak over top of hash browns and a fun little coffee pan sauce. So these are just boxed potatoes. I rehydrated for about 12 or so minutes in water. Let's give them a little squeeze. Get as much of that liquid out as we can. All right, now the hash browns. I've got a pan going here with some oil, a couple tablespoons of oil, a couple tablespoons of butter. Oil for the frying temp, butter for the flavor. I'm just gonna flatten this out to a nice thin sheet. And then we're gonna give it a nice little helping of salt. And a nice little helping of pepper. I've also got a skillet here that I'm heating up for our steaks, but first we need to make our crust. All right, guys, time to make our crust. We're kind of blackening the steak a little bit. And first we're gonna start with some coffee here. About 3.5 tablespoons. I'm starting with this, because again, I don't have a spice grinder. So we can just take the back of our spoon here and kind of mash this up until it's a fine powder. And just a nice thin layer of the instant coffee all around. Beautiful. To that, for some heat, a little cayenne. About a teaspoon. And for some color and to really help us get that seared crust, some paprika. Then we're also going to throw in some onion powder. A couple teaspoons of onion powder. A couple teaspoons of garlic powder. And then, of course, our salt and pepper here. About a teaspoon and a half of salt. And our fresh cracked pepper. About a teaspoon of that. And then I'm just going to kind of stir this around. Or you can kind of give it a little shake. Just until all the seasonings are well combined. You don't want too much of one thing and not another. And I would say that's pretty good. And of course, if you're making more than a couple steaks like I am, you can always double up on the measurements here. But I think that looks pretty good. All right, so I've got my skillet here. It is good and hot. I want these to sear beautifully. If your pan's not hot enough, then they kind of steam. And then we're just gonna come in here with our hands, clean hands, press firmly into that crust mixture so we get a generous portion of it on here. And you don't necessarily have to worry about doing the sides if you don't want to. And then it's gonna go into our skillet and listen to that sizzle. So exciting, guys. All right, and for our other steak here, we're just gonna press that firmly down into our spice mixture and just come around and get the sides here. And that one goes down too. Then we're gonna wash our hands real quick. All right, guys, steak is looking good. And then go ahead and give that a flip with that nice crust. That's not burnt, that is blackened. Those are those seasonings we throw on here, getting nice and toasty. And it's also time to flip our hash browns. I'm gonna show you guys a little secret here, okay? If you ever are shy about flipping your potatoes, get yourself a lid, turn it upside down, and there you have it. And then you just slide them right back into the pan. Now the potatoes are going to need just a little more oil so the other side gets nice and crispy and not just dark. Got another tablespoon or so. And I'm going to season the other side here, just a little salt and pepper. The steak is the star of the show, so I don't want to do too much to the potatoes here. Just give a nice little base for our steak. And we are good to go. Okay, everybody. Potatoes are ready to come out. And those don't just look beautiful, guys. Now our steaks. For the doneness of steak, I always give it a little poke. See how firm it gives back. I want this kind of between medium and medium rare. And yeah, I think that's good. We're gonna take our steaks out. Set them on our cutting board to let them rest. And we've got this beautiful pan of drippings here. What are we gonna do with that? Of course, we're gonna turn it into a lovely sauce. So I've got some minced onions here that's gonna go in. It's about half an onion. And start with that first. Just give them a little stir. As they cook, they're going to slowly release their natural juices and pick up all those bits from the steak. And I'm just going to kind of sweat them down. We can add a little more salt to that. That's also going to help them sweat down and just get a nice flavor. Now let's look at our steak. I'm just going to use that there to kind of hold it. And then we're just going to kind of slice down here. A slight diagonal. And look at that. Yeah, nice and juicy. Red in the middle, but not too bloody. Because I want our sauce to kind of be the icing on top and not necessarily the juice of the steak. You can see it's nice and juicy and cooked through. Beautiful. Then we just take our knife and get our steak here on there and transfer it over to our plate of potatoes. Beautiful. All right, now to finish our sauce, this is going to be a beurre blanc of sorts, but with coffee. How about that? So these onions look great. They're nice and caramelized. We're going to come in here. It's just some coffee that I brewed earlier. About 2 to 3 tablespoons, just enough to coat the bottom of the skillet. And just like a beurre blanc, similar like when you add the wine, you just let this cook till it reduces some and starts to kind of bubble up. You don't want it necessarily to boil, you just want it to kind of bubble up. And then I'm going to prepare my butter here. It's the change in temperature that gives us our sauce. So we want nice, cold, hard butter. And I'm just going to cut this into little cubes. So that coffee is reduced nicely. Time to add the butter. Just plop that right in. About 4 tablespoons or so. And then we'll turn that down just slightly. And what happens is the butter slowly melts and disperses itself, and the change in temperature thickens our sauce. And I don't even really stir it. Just turn it down to almost nothing and just slowly swirl that around until the butter dissolves. And you can already see it's thickening into a nice sort of gravy of sorts. Very exciting, guys. And I think we are ready to plate up. All right, guys, I think we're ready to dig in, but before we do, I believe our tiramisu blondies are ready to come out. Oh, look at that, gorgeous, nice and firm, tender, that beautiful marbling in the middle. I've got a cooling rack out for that. I want it to cool evenly so we can let the heat escape from the bottom. All right, let's start with that beautiful crispy hash brown. I love the potatoes. They're nice and crisp. And they're kind of like a sponge. They're soaking up this beautiful sauce we made. You just get the richness of all the steak juices. Just a hint of that coffee flavor, and then the butter just makes it luscious. And let's get a nice piece of steak here. Nice and pink in the center. Guys, that steak. When a steak's cooked beautifully, it melts in your mouth. Guys, so good. I'm gonna finish up here. Then we can plate up our dessert. Okay, guys. Our blondies have cooled down nicely, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut a nice little piece here. And look at that, you can see all that marbleization in there. And our ice cream has set up nicely. So I'm gonna come in here and get a nice little scoop of that. And to be a little fancy here, I got some little toffee pieces I'm just gonna sprinkle on top for a little texture. And there we have it. Does this not look good or what? Yeah. Nice and smooth and creamy. And you get just a hint of that chocolate and coffee flavor. And for the blondie. A little bit of texture from the outside, where it got nice and crusty. But then the inside is just soft and tender and moist. Getting all those flavors, the almond, the vanilla, the rum. Just a hint of that kind of mocha flavor. So good. Well, I'm going to finish up here. But I thank you guys for joining me as always. Like and subscribe, hit me up in the comment section, and until next time, bye. Thank you.